You may begin.
The initial thing that has to be established for this debate to take place is the fact that Hippokrates is becoming demographically a younger race. Due to that specific transition in the age demographic that is occurring, that is the fundamental reason why the government side, or the proposition side of the House, brings to you the motion, the idea that we should support first years running for Haka. Right. So, what are we going to be proving to you today then? Two fundamental things from our side of the House. Firstly, the principled justification consisting of house values, equality, and the Hippo becoming a younger race. Secondly, the practical justification of the competence of first years, the innovation that they bring, and how to create sustained change within the residents as a whole. Right, so, in terms of our case split, I'm going to be dealing with all of the principled analysis that we bring forward to you, except for the idea of Hippo becoming a younger race, which also comes up in our second speaker speech. And then I'm also going to be dealing with the idea of the competence of first years and how we create sustained change within Hippo as a residence. Our second speaker to tender is going to deal with the idea of innovation and the innovation that first years bring uniquely to the residents, and also the idea of the change in demographics. Right, so onto my substantive matter. Okay, so firstly, let's look at this principled idea and the context that we exist in as we are transitioning to a younger residence. Fundamentally, what needs to be understood here, and Tatenda will bring this up further, is the idea that in terms of the pool you have to select from for the people that you are voting into Haka, as it gradually gets younger and younger as a residence, you see that there's a much larger pool of first years than there are second and third years in the residence, right? What this means is that if you want to have the best possible pool to pull people from, as a democratic system should, you should have all people within the residence, because all of them are affected, being able to run for Haka, because it's specifically a position that has to represent the people within the residence. We think that if you want a democratic sort of society in the residence and to adhere to principles of democracy, which we think fundamentally create the best sort of way for people to engage with their own lives and their own self-actualization, then you create a situation in which first years can run for Haka. Because fundamentally it doesn't mean that they get voted in, right? Because the voting system still has to occur. The residence still has to approve that they get there. However, you create the opportunity for that democratic process to take place. You create the opportunity for those people to actually represent themselves to the residence as a whole. Fundamentally, we think that if they are able to convince even second and third years to vote for them and they become a Haka, definitely they have the ability to be a Haka to the best of their ability. We think that they'd be particularly good at being Haka if they manage to convince second and third years, right? So, why do we not think that the idea, because this is a bit of just rebuttal before it even comes up, we think fundamentally you can't bring forward the clash against this, that you have to know the people in the res before you can run as Haka effectively, or you have to know how res effectively operates. Because we would bring to you the idea that if you have been here for 3 terms, which we think is an arbitrary amount of time, that doesn't necessitate that you know all the people in residence, right? We think that half the second years don't actually know half the third years. We think that half the second years don't know most of the first years either, right? In that situation, we don't think that you can say that you need to know the people within your residence to be able to serve them as a leader. So that's the context of the younger res dealt with. We think we've already proven that principle of democracy and why that's important. Secondly, this idea of equality. Fundamentally, if you want people to coexist in a space and to live as some sort of family with shared values, you have to give them all an equal voice and an equal opportunity in that residence. What that means is that you create equality in the res, and you have to have this equality for people to be able to engage with each other meaningfully at the exact same level, right? We can't have this sort of seniority sort of situation where first years have to subjugate themselves to third years and stuff like that. We think that's something that Hippo's been trying to move away from. If you want to move away from that properly, you have to create full equality. I'll take you in a moment. To create full equality, you have to have first years being able to run for Haka. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay. If you say that there's no difference and everyone is equal in Hippokrates as first and second years, then why is it so important to have a first year representative in Haka?
Okay, so fundamentally, we think that even though everyone should be dealt with equally so that they can exist in the same house at an equal level, the issues experienced by different demographics within the house still are fundamentally different, because they are doing different things, different courses of study at different levels as they have progressed through the university. Just because they are equal as people doesn't mean that they face the same issues. We don't say, well, what's the point of having representation for the lower class of society because they don't do the same, because they're all equal. But no, they are poor. That's why we give them equal representation to the people who are rich, right? Because they face different issues and they both have, no thank you, they both face different issues and they both have to have their voices heard in some sort of equal manner. Equality facilitates the equality of voices, not necessarily the equality of outcomes or the fundamental equity of all the people within the house, right? So we think that deals with that POI. We think fundamentally if you want Hippo to become a more inclusive res and to deal better with first years, you have to create a more equal system. Now let's look at this final idea of principal justification, which are the house values, amity, truth, and respect. Firstly, we tell you, and this is actually touching on that POI, that every individual within the house has their own truth to tell, right? But fundamentally, that can be split up to some extent at least within first, second, and third year demographics, especially since the majority of first years years know each other far better than the second and third years will ever know those first years, right? We think in that situation, for those people to be able to perpetuate their truth within the house and to show their truth to the house, they have to be given at least the opportunity to have a platform by which to do so. Secondly, this idea of amity. If you want amity within a house, you can't arbitrarily be excluding people from running for positions of leadership simply based on some arbitrary fact of 3 terms being a time limit which, I don't know, someone happened to set at some point in time. Thirdly, this idea of respect. If you have mutual respect for everyone in your house, then there's no fundamental reason why you shouldn't be allowing all of them to run for positions such as Haka. It's not like we're making all the first years Haka, right? We're giving them an opportunity to state their case and to run for it. That's the democratic process in place. That's how you respect first years. So, on all those principled levels of justification, we tell you that we are already winning the debate, right? Now, onto this second idea of the practical nature of what we're talking about. 2 levels of analysis here. Firstly, this idea of sustained change, and then secondly, this idea of competence of first years. So, in terms of sustained change, we think that if you want change to be actively enacted within Hippokrates, what you do is you give people who are going to be in here for the longest majority of time the ability to start making change from the beginning of their term here, right? So we think that first years are able to, at least to some extent, that's out of time, are able to at least some extent engage with the problems that Hippokrates has had. But more importantly, we tell you that first years are able to justify where they want the res to become, or what they want the res to become, because they're the ones who are going to be living in it for the longest period of time. Fundamentally, that means that they have a unique ability to identify what change needs to occur, and that means that if they are given positions of power early on, and they can sustain those positions of power as they go through and have representation from the very beginning, they are able to more effectively create change throughout their stay at Hippo, and that's a change that is more sustainable and more effective, and not only that, more constant, because it's continuous amongst different leadership structures, right? So we think that practically, if you want sustained change to occur in Hippo, beneficial sustained change, you need to include the voices of the first years, because they're the voices who are going to be here the longest, and the ones who can make the best amount of change over the longest period of time. Now the final idea in 30 seconds is this idea of the competence of first years. We don't think there's any specific objective measure that you could bring to the house today that says that first years are less competent than anyone else in the house. So for that fundamental reason, the reason that it works at Francie van Zyl is that we think that due to the competence of first years and all the other reasons we've been brought forward already, you have to side with the proposition.
Thank you, proposition. Can I invite the first speaker of opposition? Whenever you're ready.
Hello, my name is Liam Dixon, as most of you probably know. And before we really get into this argument, we really just need to talk about the crux of what this debate is going to be about. And what we feel the proposition needs to prove is that the difference a first year can make as a Haka is so position dependent that waiting a year would be more detrimental to all parties involved as opposed to them beginning a term immediately. So what that basically means is having them as a Haka now in second year so vital to them being heard, to all the things that the first speaker of the proposition brought up, is that so vital that it will actually detriment the House if they are not being put in that position immediately. So, as you know, I'm the first speaker of the opposition, and our case split is as follows. I will be talking about the role of the Haka and how the current system benefits that role. I'll also be touching on non-positional and non-Haka leadership. Our second speaker, Okara, will be talking about the second year, and she'll be touching on how the House elects Haka and how that process works. So, no, thank you. And then our third speaker, Sunday, will be doing the bulk of our rebuttal, and the time allows a short summary. So I'm going to begin with some rebuttal. So, kind of brought up mostly this principle justification, and then he also brought up this fact that, and it's something that I want to concede early, is that he says that we might think that first years are less competent and will not be able to fulfill this role. And if we're talking about, in a vacuum, a first year will be able to be a good Haka if they have that capability within them. But the thing is, nothing is in a vacuum. Being a Haka member in this phrase is not just being a Haka member. And that's something that our second speaker, Carl, will be touching on. So, no, thank you. So the big thing that he brought up was the fact that it's a junior residence. and we're having the best possible pool, and it's a democracy, and how first years need representation. But as I said in my POI, we believe in this res, like we don't want to have any type of arbitrary separation between first and second years through equality and stuff like that. We also want their voices to be heard, and then kind of had this kind of implication, or he implied a lot, that just because first years can't be hardcore, that means their voices can't be heard. And we feel like that's very, very incorrect. I don't know about you, but as a first year, you are not being pushed into silence. There's many positions, you can run on any single comm that you want. You can give your voice in first year comm. There's lots of positional and non-positional leadership that you can give your voice.
Question 1, does being hardcore carry with it some authority? Question 2, if it doesn't, then why do we need the hardcore as a structure at all if people can create whatever change they need to and have their voices changed anyway?
Of course, hardcore carries authority, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the comms are obsolete and they don't have any influence on the workings of the house either. But I'll get to that in my second point. So, and then he brought up the amity, truth, and respect, and how all three of these help his justification of principle. He said that with amity, there's this arbitrary factor that's not allowing first years to run as hardcore, but that's not the case. Akar will get into very good reasons why the res feels like running as hardcore in second year will be detrimental to both the house and an individual. He said, truth, that how we need to give this platform to first years to hear their voices, but once again I said there are many different platforms, and I'll get to that in my second point. And then also he said something about respect, saying how first years, we will be respecting first years by letting them run, but we are already respecting first years by hearing their voice in any comm they can join, and in first years comm, and allowing them to have tangible change in the house, I think. And then he also brought up this point about how running in first year so you can have your term in second year will allow you to have this prolonged change if you continue running. First of all, just because you have a first term doesn't mean you're going to be elected for a second term. So I don't know how well that prolonged change can happen. Thank you. And then also, Akar will get into it as well, but like we don't believe that being a second year hardcore will make you a good hardcore because of the struggles of second year. I'm sure we can all talk about that, but Akar will be getting into that. And yes, now onto more of my positive matter, and kind of brushed off this point about how this 3-semester term is absolutely arbitrary into creating a good and like a well-rounded hardcore. But we believe we believe the contrary. Like if we try to ask what is the role of the hardcore, we define it as upholding the house values, knowing the environment in which you're leading, and the direction of the house. Also just being the leader in the house, being the social, having those social responsibilities, and then also just a crap load of admin that you have to do, which you need time, and then also just being the bridge, and I think being the bridge between res students and then the external leadership structures. Akar will also be getting into this, but with regards to admin, the university will also make no adjustments for you as a second year hardcore member. And then also we really want to get on about why this three semester term is necessary. We believe that it does help you fulfill the roles of a hardcore. It does help you learn the house values, learn this environment, especially if you're a first year coming out from school, helping you to learn what res life is, the capabilities of this res, the fiscal management, the leadership structures, and the fact that everybody needs to work within Tygerberg campus and with the grade system of Bosch University, which they have no experience with. Yes.
You've conceded that first years are not less competent than anyone else, so why can't they do these things?
Because they've never had this experience. Being a good leader does not mean you know how res works. It doesn't mean you know how leadership structures work in a place that you've never been before. That's got nothing to do with being a competent leader, which I said earlier. And then also you don't get to learn the mechanics of Hippo, the in and outs. And then also, I feel like creating these personal relationships is a really important part. Kind of said that you don't need to know the people you're leading, but I feel like it's a vital part of knowing the people you're leading, because why are you being a leader in this house if you don't care about the people and forming relationships with them? I don't know about you, but I feel like every single hardcore in the res at the moment can say that they know at least everyone in this house. And that comes with being here and having the time to get to know those people. And then also a big point that we want to bring up is that you guys being here for 3 terms allows you to learn the context of Hippo. Hippo has like a bit of a touchy history. It has things that we need to like know about so that we can be a better leader to to follow that vision and the direction that the house is going in. So if we are here to know the past, if we are here, we can learn that past and maybe fit in our values and our ideas into that vision that they have. Okay. And then I just want to touch my final point about non-positional leadership and about how just because you aren't in Haka doesn't mean you can't have a voice and influence in the house. And then a big thing we want to talk about is how if you aren't in Haka and you have these big ideas and you are so competent as a leader and you want to have this influence, you can put that passion into other comms, but you can step back if you feel that you can no longer handle the patience of your leader.
Can I invite the second speaker of proposition to whenever you're ready.
Okay. This is an ideal for which I've fought very hard for all first years to have the right to be part of their respective house committees. This is a quote that we've heard many, many times by a very wise woman. Okay. Hippo is not a conservative race. We're not living in the 1950s. So why are we so backwards when it comes to this one specific point? After the age of 18, you're allowed to own land, you're allowed to vote, you're allowed to drink, you're allowed to smoke, you're allowed to sue and be sued, you're allowed to open a bank account, you're allowed to serve on a jury, you're allowed to get married, and you're allowed to stand for an election as a member of parliament in most countries. So yet why in Hippo, where some of our first years are already 20 years of age, are not allowed to run for the Haka? What are some of the qualities that make a good leader? Honesty, integrity, commitment, passion, accountability, and creativity. Who is to say that first years do not have these leadership roles? Who is to say that second years are more capable than first years and have these attributes that first years do not? Why should we not allow Why should we not allow people the platform to vote and choose who they believe is capable of the role? I'm going to begin my speech with a rebuttal of the opposition's points or possible points that they might give you to try and deceive you, of which they'll be of no consequence because I trust in the end will make the right and obvious decision and implement the proposed policy. I will then go on to present my points and my argument as we see it and we assume that the House at large views it. First of all, the opposition will tell you that by allowing first years to run for Haka, you dilute the Haka with mostly first years who have no experience. This is incorrect because generally most people vote for people who they know. So if you open the platform for everyone to apply, generally you will get a good representation of all the years because people will vote for their years. And then, therefore, you have a representation of people's needs and views. Yes.
But don't you feel like that could, somehow not rig the election, but in first year, you're just going to be voting for the first year that you know the most, when it just become a popularity contest?
Wouldn't you say that's the case for most years?
No.
Furthermore, okay, you would put the argument across that we don't know each other. But if you've spent almost a year in res with people in your year, I'm sure that is enough time for you to get to know them. If you still do not know them at that point in time, then you probably never will know them. No. Okay. The first speaker spoke that first years don't need the Haka as a platform for them to raise their opinions or raise their views. So then wouldn't you say that the Haka platform itself is inconsequential? Because if you don't need it to raise your points, then why should we have a Haka in the first place? Furthermore, you would say the opposition raised the points that there are other possible leadership roles in Hippo that first years can take part. No. Why are we assuming that first years are not responsible enough, are only responsible to take part in minor leadership positions, which isn't true? We as the proposition believe that a good leader is a good leader, whether or not you're in first, second, or third year, and we can all contribute to the Haka in a positive impact. The opposition spoke that first years do not have experience, but many of us were head boys and girls in our primary schools, where we represented over 3,000 students, so why can't we represent 400 people in res? And then the opposition went on further to say that Haka is not a permanent position, and so therefore you will move out of it in first and second year, so that it has no progression of the views. But that's not correct. When we spoke about progression, we did not speak about individuals. We spoke about the first years as a collective and their views and principles. Furthermore, the opposition tried to bring a point across the point that the higher years have more experience in res and so are more fit for the haka role. But what experience is there if we are not exposed to these leadership roles in the first place? What experience can be gained if we do not give first years the platform to be on these leadership roles? Yes.
First years do have a lot of experience that they can gain through leadership roles such as first and second year comm. And we don't believe that the first leadership experience that a first year should get in a res is being a hardcore and running this house.
I will come back to your point further later on in my speech. Now my speech will be based on 4 main points, and at the end of this debate you will see that the proposition's points are actually the logical side. First of all, age brings about experience, but age also brings about more workload. Let's not lie to ourselves, this is medical school. And so by saying that first years may not be able to handle the work of the haka, it's not actually true because fourth years have much more work. So in fact, what we should be doing is encouraging first years to join these leadership positions if they have more time on their hands and therefore can be more dedicated to the position. No. Furthermore, no one knows their year groups more than the people in those actual year groups. I do not expect a second year to be able to represent my views as a first year. Yes, you may have been in first year yourself. However, times change and your first year experience may not be the same as mine. I know the needs of people in my year that we're experiencing at that point in time, and so I am better to represent my year. Furthermore, Hippo is becoming a younger and younger resident. It made sense back then for us to not allow first years into the haka because you only had 40 first years. But now where it's the biggest group in residence with over 120 first years, it only makes sense that we allow them to be part of the leadership because then we can represent the majority of the people in res. Not only will the decisions made by the haka affect them the most, but it's also a bigger pool to choose from, and therefore you have a wider range of leadership to choose from. Instead of selecting from only 20 fourth years and expecting them to do a good job, no offense. But okay. Furthermore, first years bring about new ideas. What do we mean by this? I am coming from Joburg, you're coming from Cape Town, I'll come back to you now. You're coming from Kimberley. We are all coming from different backgrounds, therefore we have different ideas. And we bring across the point that by being put in Hippo without the platform to speak your ideas or be in a leadership position, it brings about conformity of thought. So therefore we will all think the same way. We're eradicating new ideas. But if we allow first years to be part of the haka immediately, we then open the gates for new ideas to come flowing in. Furthermore, first, as I said earlier in my speech, first years can join Tygerberg Parliament, first years can join National Parliament at the age of 18. Yet they can't join Hippo Parliament. If you're in Parliament, you make laws that the health governing bodies have to abide to. The same health governing bodies that we abide to in medical school. Yet we can't make decisions that affect us in our own residence. In addition to this, okay, we should not exclude first years from the haka. We spoke about experience, but how do we gain this experience if we're only exposed to the haka at the end of second year? There is no passing of information, and therefore we have no experience whatsoever. But with all formalities aside, this is a matter that affects each and every one of us. And so we need to think about this carefully as how we will go forward. This is not a dynasty. We should therefore give people the right to vote for who they want. We should not put limitations on who people can choose from. We claim to be a progressive res. We're a young and vibrant res. So therefore there's nothing that says young and vibrant more than a res that is run and spearheaded by first years themselves. It is therefore for this reason why our points outweigh the opposition's points. So let's not waste time.
Can I please invite the second speaker of opposition?
Can we just leave like 2 seconds?
What's up guys, my name is Akara and I'm the second speaker for the opposition side of the house today. So in my speech today, like the first speaker said, my 2 points of positive matter are dealing with second year as a whole, and I'm also going to be speaking a little bit about the actual election process and what we hope to get out of it, right, as an ideal outcome. But before I can get into that, I'm first going to be dealing with some rebuttals. So first speaker proposition brought to the House all the benefits that first years can bring to the House as a whole, right? And the thing is that we wholeheartedly agree with a lot of the things he said, right? So we believe that first years can be competent as leaders, and we believe that first years can bring innovation, but nowhere did he prove that a first year cannot promote the change of the exact same, or exactly the same change that a non-positioned leader can, right? And we also feel like there are a lot of alternative pathways that a first year can take, like first year's comm, social comm, green comm. If you have a vision, there's literally nothing stopping you from presenting that idea to the leadership structure that's relevant to you, right? And exacting that same amount of change. So he also came later with the POI and asked about the authority that we assign to Harker, therefore what's the point of having it if we can all be non-positional leaders. So the point that we're trying to make is not that a first year cannot deal with authority or cannot handle authority. And the point is that they are a new environment that has its own values and its own vision. And we really feel like 6 months is, no thank you, 6 months is simply not long enough for a first year to become accustomed to the vision that Hippokrates has for itself, right? So if we take a look at the timeline of the first year, the first month, first 2 months maybe, they're going to be settling in, right? It's a week, things are lit, there's parties, whatever. And then the next few months they're adjusting, right? So they're going to get used to the schoolwork, they're going to get used to the workload that the degree actually presents. And then it's June, July, and it's actually time to apply for Harker. And where in that time do they have time to actually consider running for Harker? Because we really don't feel that Harker is something that you just decide overnight. We really think that you need an adequate amount of time to consider whether or not you want to run as a leader, and also an adequate amount of time of what is the vision of the House? How can I fit into this? How can I contribute to this? And we just feel that there is no time for this in the first 6 months of a first year. Yes, sir.
That's subjective analysis which only applies on a case-by-case basis. That doesn't disprove that there isn't enough first year that could do it.
Okay, so I'm going to be speaking a little bit why a first year can't do it in my speech about second year. To finish my rebuttal, the speech from second speakers. Okay, so the second speaker brought us a really ridiculous comparison, I feel, of matric versus red leadership. And I honestly feel like that's a little bit of a ridiculous comparison because there's such a big difference in structures, right? And Harker is not monitoring a student body on how long their skirts are and stuff. It's just literally not the same thing. You're dealing with people that live together with you, no thank you, sir, in an environment where you can affect change, and we really don't feel like the comparison can be made. Yeah. To move on to my first point about second year. Okay, so I'm going to be speaking a little bit about second year across the board in terms of 4 subpoints. So the first one is the differences between first and second year. The second one is the challenges presented by second year. And then we're going to contextualize this a little bit within the confines of the debate. I'm going to talk about 3, how points 1 and 2 would influence a first year candidate specifically in their capacity as Harker. And then 4th, hopefully we can all draw the conclusion that second year is a contributing factor to why it would be detrimental to both the House and the first year as to why they should not run for Harker. No, thank you, sir. Okay, so to deal with the first subpoint of the differences between first and second year. So if we look at the Harker term and when it's actually situated in the year, right? I think it's from like June, with when campaigns, votes, caucus, or June, August of one year to June, August of like the next year, right? So what does this coincide with? So first of all, it coincides with the splitting of the class, right? In first year, the allies separate. So medicine, physio, dietetics, they all end their interprofessional phase and they begin specializing, and the degree becomes more true to what it's actually going to be for the rest of the X years that you have to spend in this lovely place called Tigerwood. So what does this mean? This means that we need a period of adjustment, right? You're going to have to adjust your learning styles. You're going to have to adjust your studying techniques and generally just get used to how your degree actually works, because I think, as we all know, first year, first semester is not the same as how your degree runs for the rest of your life. So for example, medicine goes into the block system, right? So first semester, everything's integrated. You have modules running concurrently, things running at the same time, but blocks literally just don't work the same. And with change, you're going to have to adjust. And this is also, no thank you. This is also a period of trial and error. So we've established that there's a shift in the degree, in the structure of the degree. And another difference that we feel is really significant is like literally just the workload. And this is a really, really significant difference between first and second year, right? And it's common across all the allied degrees. And what I mean, no thank you. What I mean by workload is that there's an increase in the difficulty of your work, like literally just the comprehension and like the understanding of your work, but not just this, there's literally an increase in just the sheer volume of work that you have to get through in a specific amount of time. So this leads on to point 2, the challenges presented by second year. So I've already spoken about the increasing difficulty and volume of the work. So if we take an example across the board, dietetics have, in first year, they have a test, I think every Monday, every second Monday, which means that their weekends are taken up by studying, and in second year, this shifts to tests every Friday, and these tests are also more frequent, right? So that's a lot more time academically that you need to like apply yourself, because essentially we're all get to catch our degrees. So you're going to have this period of adjustments, which is unique to this specific time frame during the end of the first semester of first year. And you're also going to be having this period of academic strain. And this is being experienced by the first time by its potential Harker candidate in first year, right? And these are combined. So to conclude on point 2, second year is literally challenging for anyone across the board. And I'm not saying that people can't deal with it, but it's definitely a change. People have to make adjustments, right? So now we're going to contextualize this within the confines of the debate. So we're going to look at the role of the haka, which the first speaker also spoke about a little bit. So the simplest terms, the haka is the bridge between the students and external structures, and they also represent the house, things like that. But with this responsibility comes alternative duties that you also have to do, right? So you have to attend symposia when you're in haka, right? Compulsory symposium. You have to go to every student parliament meeting. You have to plan O week. You have to be there in O week. You have to be haka on duty, right? You have haka meetings that you have to attend. So if we combine 1, 2, and 3 points, we've established that the commencement of the haka term coincides with the academic changeover period, and this changeover itself brings challenges which are unique to this specific time at the end of first semester, first year. So to combine this period of academic strain with the additional stress of running for and standing as haka, one or the other is going to be detrimental, right? And we really don't want that. We really don't feel that the individual has to place one over the other, because A, we're all here to catch degrees, right? And ultimately we really shouldn't have to jeopardize this, and B, the house does not vote people into a position of power for them to do a substandard job, right? That's literally not what we want. So we can concur. At any year, juggling haka and academics is tough, right? This is true across the board, like I think Connor or Tatenda said, 3rd year, 4th year, it's difficult to juggle haka and your academics. But the difference is that after a year and a bit, you've had time to adjust and learn how to juggle multiple responsibilities. And also, we feel like a really big difference is that in 3rd and 4th year, when you're haka, they can accommodate you. So for the beginning at O week, you get to choose the rotation, you're allowed to do SIG tests and things like that, but it's not the case for 2nd year because the rest cannot change for you. So to end the point, if after a year you are academically stable, nothing is barring you from running, and the waiting can only serve to benefit all the parties involved. Thank you.
Before I even begin with what it is that I need to discuss, first I have the following question. If side opposition in this motion is correct, then why is Franz Fazale not in complete disarray? Why is their entire residence not in complete shambles? Because they themselves are implementing the idea that first years should be able to run for the House Committee. So if it is so horrible and such a bad idea, why is it that it is not in complete shambles? Here's a perfectly good example of where this policy is implemented and it happens to work. First of all, side proposition, we have come to you and we are bringing forward the motion that this House believes that first years should be allowed to run for House Committee. The operative word here being should be allowed to, not will they, must they, can they, whatever. We are saying that they should be at least allowed to. The process of actually electing a House Committee member is a fairly democratic one as far as we're concerned, and you still have to actually vote for the person. We are saying that it should be allowed for a person to put themselves in the position to be able to vote for a situation. Yes.
So on your point of Franz Fazale versus Hippokrates, first of all, I feel like we're two different races and you really can't compare that. And also, if they do have a first year / second year on their haka, you really can't see the effects that it has on the individual, so you might not actually be getting the full scope of what's been going on.
Okay, in terms of I totally acknowledge side opposition side, but in terms of it being a completely different residence, we are all studying the same course, the same medicine, and the same situation. So the fact that they have all female race, and then this is a mixed race, yes, there are going to be certain things that are different about this situation. But in terms of leadership and being able to lead, we're not just saying first years that are female, first years that are male are able to run. We're talking about the competency of first years in general. So if a first year who is male wants to run, they should be able to run. If a first year who is female, just hold on, is able to run, they should be able to run. Yes.
The thing is, the point is that it's not that we're not allowing you to run, it's just that we have these systems in place for reasons. You're neglecting the reasons that we brought up in our opposition debates, why we're not allowing them to run. With second year being hard and with them needing to learn about this. That's the reason it's not that we're not allowing them, it's that we're just not putting them in that terrible position.
okay, the fact that you're deciding that it's a terrible position, you're being very subjective about the situation, and you're saying that you're not saying that they're not allowed to run, and then you contradict yourself by saying, we're just saying that we're not going to be able to put them in that position. You're not permitting them to run. The whole point of this motion is that you are actually for the fact that we should not be allowed to run for this thing. First of all, we brought to you the concept of equality. Now, what does that mean? Does that not mean equal representation? So if I'm in first year, should I not be able to see someone who is in my year, who's going to be experiencing the same things that I'm experiencing, who's in the same sort of situation that I am experiencing, and then I go to them and I tell them about my problem, what it is that I need them to fix, what it is our vision and mission is for the res going forward. We also brought to you the concept of the fact that it's a younger residence. No, thank you. It is a younger residence. We the people, for the people, by the people. That is something that has become synonymous with the idea of democracy. Where is this idea of democracy and this fair, wonderful, beautiful race of Hippokrates if like a third of the people who actually live here are not even being represented in? No, thank you. Side opposition has come and they've told us that we don't have enough time to get to know the people or how the res works. There are people here in second and third year who still don't know people who are in second and third year. The length of time does not does have some sort of impact on how much you get to know the people that you're living with and how much you actually know them. But at the same time, it's the actual individual. It is the subjective individual who chooses whether or not you want to go out and get to know the people who you're living with. People in second year and third year can choose that they don't want to get to know anyone. That doesn't make them any more competent than a first year who's actually going to make the decision, hey, I want to get to know second year, I want to get to know third year, I want to get to know the race. It's not about which year you're in, how old you are. It's about your level of understanding, your cognizance. So I'm going to decide that I want to get to know the race, I want to do something. And if I can do this in first year, then definitely I should be allowed to run for House Committee. They've also brought the struggles of second year and the struggles of third year, and also how second and third year are way more difficult. But the thing is, if you're telling us that we can't allow first years to run for House Committee because they still need to adjust to first year, they need to adjust to studying medicine, they need to adjust. Do you not need to adjust to second year if you're from first year? Do you need to adjust to third year if you're coming from second year as well? Because definitely you're not studying the same things you're studying in second year when you go to third year. When you're in third year and you're going to fourth year, you're not going to be studying the same things. There's always some sort of level of adjustment that when you're going from one academic year to another academic year. Tell me, Okara, what's up?
So the difference that I was trying to make in my speech, right, isn't that there's like differences between second, third, and fourth year because the block system is implemented across second, third, and fourth year. The difference that we're trying to bring across is the difference between interprofessional phase, where everybody's together, and the difference between the actual degree, which only definitely starts second semester, first year, which also runs concurrently with half elections.
I love the fact that you agree with me that you were trying to bring that across, but you didn't, so I back you. Also, I actually really agree with side opposition in the sense that, yes, you still adjusting to like the block time. So now there's going to be an entire block when you're going to be in hospital, you're going to be doing rounds, you're going to be doing other things. You're not going to have time to be fulfilling like we know that in first year when we were doing our orientation week, some of the House Committee members could not be here at certain times because they were busy doing hospital things. We acknowledge the fact that it is difficult. Thank you, sit down. That it is difficult sometimes for second years and third years who are doing house rotations, who are doing hospital rotations, to be able to do the work that it needs. That takes a toll on the House Committee member. We agree that it does take a toll. We agree that the fact that side opposition has told us about the struggles of second year, the struggles of third year. So what we're saying is, let us help you while we still don't have all of these struggles that we're going to have. While we are also adjusting, while you are also adjusting to your second year, to your third year, to your fourth year, let us help you. We're not saying that the entire committee must be run by first years. We are saying that in a situation there should be at least an equal amount of representation in the House. So a few second years here, a few third years here. If it was comprised mostly of third years, don't you think that the main voice that would be implemented and the main vision of the res would be the one that is thought of by the third years? We have also brought to you the practicality of the situation, and we have so eloquently put that sustainable change, not by an individual saying, okay, now I'm in first year, I'm going to be House Committee member, oh, then in the next year I'm also going to be implemented. No, we're saying that as a group, we have a vision and a mission because we know one another in that group. I'm definitely not going to know a second year the way that her second years know her. You're not going to know a first year the way we know one another. So we are saying that we should be able to run for House Committee member in the idea of the House rules, being amity, truth, and respect. We respect one another. Where's the amity when it comes to when we want to represent one another in a committee? And in truth, definitely we're not like, and sometimes, not all first years are 18 and just came out of high school. We also need to put that into consideration. You're not always going to find that the first year is necessarily 18, it's just fresh out of high school, and even if they are, it's voting based anyway. We are just saying that we should be allowed to run for the House Committee. Whether or not the actual first year is put into the committee is based on the House and the way the House votes. Definitely there's a system that's been put in place. Side opposition has told us about the system. So we're not saying all House committee members must be in first year. We're saying we should be allowed to run and let the House decide. Thank you.
Thank you. The speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, the crux of this debate, one of the side propositions to win, they need to convincingly prove that the difference that the first year hawker can make in the House is so position dependent that waiting one single year will have been more detriment to everyone involved than waiting than if they're beginning the term immediately. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Asante and I'm the third speaker of side opposition. My first speaker spoke about the role of the House committee member, the different activities they need to fulfill, and how a first year student will have difficulty in fulfilling these roles based on their second year. Secondly, and leading into her second point, which is second year blues, and also the fact that there is non-positional leadership and other leadership structures that allow you to make your voice heard as a first year. Now, my responsibility as a third year is to solely focus on rebuttal and also to sum up the debate at the end. The case of side proposition this side, leave it on the point that, well, first of all, their case split was, first of all, Connor had a principal analysis about the benefits of having a first year as a leadership. They spoke about democracy and how democracy is good and how we should have first years as they are the majority to be the university. They spoke about the competence of the first years, innovation that they bring, and a change in demographic. Ladies and gentlemen, with these points, they have not even begin to prove why it is more valuable for them to have a second year House committee member than to have a first year House committee member, and I shall prove to you why. First of all, I'd like to start with a very, very confident second speaker on this side who came up and told us about how we are so backwards in our thinking that we're not allowing first years to stand and to be able to stand as House committee members. He made the ridiculous comparison between matric and race leadership, and he made, no, thank you, sir. And he told us that we're actually diluting the House committee. I don't know, somehow we're diluting the House committee by introducing first years into the mix. Now, first of all, I'd like to clarify our case as team opposition and show you how team proposition never actually clashed and never actually answered the questions that we brought up on their policy and their debate. What we are saying instinctively as team proposition is that first years, yes, they may have the qualities of leadership required to be a House committee member, but first of all, the time, the context, and the time, the context, and the capabilities, it may be more difficult for them to be able to thrive and to give the best abilities in order to lead the House. Yes, they may have the qualities, but in order for you to have the best capabilities to lead the House, what do you need? First of all, you need to have experience. You need to understand where the House is coming from, where the House is, in order to be the engine and the GPS that guides the House towards achieving its vision. It is not coming here with your big ideas and changing everything if you don't understand the system and if you don't understand how things work. In order to change the system, in order to move forward in the House, you need to understand how things work and therefore implement your ideas, and they can become more successful. Secondly, no thank you. I'll just address the issue of innovation and competence within the first years, which is the bulk of their argument, and now it falls flat on its face. Secondly, they're speaking about the change in demographic. Yes, there is a change in demographic and everyone is different. That's more reason for you to spend time and understand the people that you're going to be leading. No, thank you. Understand the people that you're going to be leading. The fact that I'm different, I come from a different context than you do. Therefore, I need to understand the people that I'm going to be leading. Understand the way they think, understand what they want to do in the House, and then be able to implement these measures better. Because I understand the way they're thinking. I speak about what I want to do in the House. They get what they understand me, and I understand them. Therefore, implementing this vision and working towards this leadership, especially in your third year, will be, or in years subsequent to your second year, which is a very difficult year, objectively. First of all, let me explain how we think that it is objective. It is objective that no, thank you, comrade, calm down. No, thank you. So we need to make sure that. Okay, so I was at the point of explaining how it is objective. How my second speaker was point about second year being difficult is actually objective, and the fact that first of all it is a lot more work with a lot more time spent on it. So academically it is difficult. People struggle. Ask anyone who's been in second year, they struggle. We spoke to a second house committee haka and House Kirkenbank, who live, if any of you know her, and she told us that she struggles. Yes, it's a different context, but she is a second year house committee, and she struggles in that context. So thank you. So it's difficult for you to fulfill your roles and also to be academically successful in this context. Let me reiterate this again. We're not saying that you are not capable to run based on your leadership qualities, but the context, the time, make you not, may be able to not prevent you to be able to be successful in your leadership. No, thank you, sir. So that was the bulk of my rebuttal. So basically, what it comes down to, as I've said many times, is the fact that we need capable leaders. Leaders that are able to lead us, leaders that are able to carry the vision of the house. And in order to do this, we need to understand each other, we need to understand the house values, understand where the house is going, and we need to be able to implement, and we need to be able to understand what your responsibilities as a house member. No, thank you, sir. Understand your responsibilities as a member, first of all, and then also a leader, within the different leadership structures that you can work in order to become a successful leader. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to invite the proposition's reply.
No, the opposition's reply.
Can we have
opposition.
a hot minute to just
With your
like not even
Okay.
30 seconds.
They'll get 30 seconds.
How long do I have to?
4:30.
4 minutes. So at the beginning of my speech, I said the following. I said, what we feel the opposing side needs to prove is that the difference a first year can make as a haka is so position dependent that waiting a year would be more detrimental to all parties involved as opposed to beginning that term immediately. And I would like to say why the proposition did not prove that, why we believe they did not prove that. So the first point that they kind of threw around a lot was that the point of equal representation, how first years need to be heard, how the junior raise, the raise needs the first year's new ideas, that they cannot voice their opinions, and that Tatenda kind of put it up in a nice quote. He said that Hippo is eradicating new ideas. So we actually believe that this is absolutely 100% not the case. First years definitely have a voice in this raise. They are the loudest voice in this raise. There's a lot of positions. We brought up the fact that there's so many positions, so many comms, so many leadership structures and non-positional leadership opportunities that first years can be a part of. But all that the proposition brought up against us is that, but then what is the point of having a haka? Which we did kind of say that that's not the point of what we want to, that's not the point of the haka, that's not the role of the haka that I brought up. They didn't once try to clash with that point of that there being other leadership structures. And then the second clash kind of mixed in with the first one, but it's the idea of this democracy and how first years just aren't allowed, and like there's no reason why there's not allowed, but we brought up many reasons why first years aren't allowed to run for haka. Second year is rough. Majority of Akar's speech was about how second year will just either create detriment to the individual or to the house. And if it's so important about having a democracy, but we're detrimenting we're ultimately creating a detriment to the individual, the house, is that worth it? And then also, there was this great point about our point about the 3-month process and how it helps you to learn the context and helps you become a better haka. But all they kind of counted that point was that it's this arbitrary time. But then why is the 6 months enough for you to know that you want to run? Is that not just as much of an arbitrary time when that's all that you brought up against that point? And then when we did bring up this point about second year being so difficult, all you used to clash that was, we have the time, let us help you, but Okara definitely proved that this is the phase in which you will have the least amount of time. You are going to be adjusting. You're going to be learning new things about yourself, discovering new things about yourself. Where in that time will you be able to decide personally as a person that you would like to be a leader, you would like to run as a haka and put this time into a house instead of, like Okara says, catching a degree. And that's why we believe that the proposition did not prove that the first years need this urgency to run immediately. And we believe that they can just run next year. Thank you.
Definitely not going to start. So the reason side opposition has clearly lost today's debate hinges on the very strategic flaws of their entire case. Primarily the fact that all of the so-called harms and reasons that first years can't run for haka are entirely subjective, as we told you in the POI, which they conceded to as well by saying that first years are equally competent as everyone else. And fundamentally then, if all of their analysis is subjective and relies on case-by-case analysis, there is no good, clear reason why you can't say that everyone should be allowed to run. Again, we reiterate, it's allowed to run, not we would make the haka full of first years, right? In that case, we tell you that fundamentally, you should be creating a space in which those individuals who don't fit the mold that side opposition has tried to put us in unfairly, those individuals should still be allowed to run, and if they can actually make it into the haka via the democratic process, definitely they should have been there to begin with anyway, right? So, further strategic flaws. Further, we tell you, number one, that all of their logic can apply as a case to eliminate the haka itself with all these ideas of, for example, non-positional leadership, which is so effective that you can do anything in the residence, and secondly, this idea that you are adjusting in your first year. We told you, you're adjusting in your second year, you're adjusting in your third year. But more than this, we came and we told you that not everyone in first year is someone who's just come out of high school, right? There are literally people who have had jobs and like worked to bring, like in the news, for example, our, what's her name? The class rep, who worked to bring down like crime rings and shit like that when she was a news reporter, right? Those people who are older than probably most of the people in this room, why can't they run for haka? Secondly, we tell you that under the status quo, right? Like all of their analysis about the idea that you need to know the res falls because under the status quo, the current policy literally is that a BA student can come from Stellenbosch with their degree and run for haka in their first year of being at Hippokrates. Why? Because they've been here for the arbitrary 3 terms required. This was literally in my first speaker speech, right? So we tell you that fundamentally, when they come up here and tell us that we have to prove to you a detriment of waiting, or that we have to prove to you the significance of the position, which we did, right? We told you about equality, we told you about democracy, and we told you about the authority that the position comes with. But more than that, we didn't have to prove these things to you. What we had to prove to you was that there was no good reason for first years not be able to run. We did this when we told you that 3 terms is an arbitrary figure, as I've just reiterated. We did this when we told you that there are people who can be competent, who can do the job effectively, and that those people should then be able to run. Fundamentally, we're winning the debate not only on our own burden of proof, because we proved to you principles and we proved to you practicality, but also on the burden that they falsely imposed upon us, right? So then, 2 main questions in the debate. One, is there good principled justification for first years not running? And secondly, are there specific practical reasons that first years shouldn't run? So, in terms of this first idea of the principled justifications of first years not running, they didn't actually come up with any decent principles. In fact, they conceded the principled case to us. So then we would tell you that the best case that side opposition could bring forward, right, is a case that negates all of our positive matter on the practical side of things. A case in which basically the debate becomes moot. But what we would tell you in that situation is that they still haven't effectively shown us why, if the debate is moot, and that would be an arbitrary factor, why then we shouldn't, just for equality's sake, implement the process that allows first years to run. Why we shouldn't, for democracy's sake, allow first years to run. They had to prove to us why specifically allowing first years to run just for the reason of equality, if all other reasons fail, isn't good enough. And they did not do that. They've lost the debate on that reason. Secondly, this idea of the practical reasons for first years not to run. We think that all of the practical matter that they brought forward to you about these ideas of first years not knowing everyone in the race or not having enough experience, again, are not necessarily true. They are subjective and rely on case-by-case analyses, right? And we furthermore tell you that we gave you very good practical reasons why first years should run. We told you that we are competent, that we told you that we bring new ideas, and ideas should be implemented or brought forward at least as soon as they are possible at the highest level of authority, and all other leadership structures beneath. There's your non-positional leadership answered. And finally, that if you want sustained and effective and long-term change, you start implementing that change from the very beginning. That's what we bring you. That's why we win.